Let's move on to our next story, which is the sad news coming from the United States that actor Leonard Nimoy, who was most famous for playing the iconic Star Trek character Dr. Spock, has died aged 83. He'd been suffering from a lung disease. Well, Sky's Paul Kelso joins us now from Washington. Paul, he made it clear quite a while ago, about a year ago, that he had COPD, this lung disease, and allowed that to be publicised as a warning to younger smokers. Nevertheless, he'll be mourned greatly by many Star Trek fans across the United States and Europe.
Absolutely, yes. He died this morning, 83 years old. He blamed his death from this lung disease on smoking, which he gave up in his 50s more than 30 years ago. But throughout that time, he's been feted and his work loved by the generations, particularly the ones that grew up with that first cast of Star Trek, of which he was such a vivid member. The story of the USS Enterprise heading off into space to boldly go where no man had gone before, or as it became in slightly more politically correct days, to go where no one had gone before. He was the only alien on board Mr. Spock, that ship, half Vulcan, half human. Very distinctive, the pointed ears, the greeting, and his unfailing reliance on logic, and that was really the character's great appeal. He was had no human emotion, and so was a great foil to Captain Kirk and the rest of the characters as they explored the themes that the programme made its trademark. He was a bit of a polymath beyond this one role. He was a method actor, the technique in which actors embed themselves in the role, and perhaps no surprise that with such a great character he should be defined by it throughout his life. But he did many more things besides. He worked his way up through minor roles in long-running TV series in the US, like The Twilight Zone, Maverick. He worked as a cab driver, an usher, on his way up in Hollywood, and then got his break in Star Trek in 1966. Once that career moved on, he moved into directing as well as the Star Trek movies. He directed Three Men and a Baby, which became a franchise. He wrote voluminous amounts of poetry and some lots and lots of pop music as well, so probably less well received. But he did embrace this role throughout his life. He wrote two autobiographies, one called I Am Not Spock and one 20 years later called I Am Spock. So I think he accepted that this role was to be his. And he was still tweeting quite busily in these last days of his illness. And one final tweet just 4 days ago, a rather moving, in which he said, "A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved, except in memory." And he signed off LLAP as he did all his tweets, which was, of course, the Vulcan greeting, live long and prosper.
Paul, thanks very much indeed. Paul Kelso there in Washington for us.